Australian citizenship. Our common bond. Becoming an Australian citizen. Becoming an Australian citizen is an important process where a person pledges their loyalty to Australia and its people, and is then entitled to exercise their rights and responsibilities as a citizen of our nation. The Australian Citizenship Test. The Australian Citizenship Test is designed to assess whether you have an adequate knowledge of Australia, its democratic system, beliefs and values, and the responsibilities and privileges of citizenship. The Citizenship Test is a computer-based, multiple-choice test in English. It consists of 20 randomly selected questions, and as of November 15, 2020, it will also include 5 questions on Australian values. To pass the test, you must answer all 5 of the values questions correctly, with a mark of at least 75% or overall. Citizenship tests are conducted in Department of Home Affairs offices around Australia. Tests are also scheduled in a number of locations throughout regional Australia and in some overseas missions. Testable section. All the information you need to know to pass the citizenship test is in the first 4 parts of this book. Part 1: Australia and its people. Part 2: Australia's democratic beliefs, rights, and liberties. Part 3: Government and the law in Australia. Part 4: Australian values. You will need to know and understand the information in the testable section to answer the questions in the citizenship test. Assistance during the citizenship test. We expect that most prospective Australian citizens will have the literacy skills necessary to complete the citizenship test without help. Text-to-speech technology, which you can use to listen to the questions and choice of answers, is also available. After the Australian citizenship test. If you pass the test, we will continue to process your application. If your application is approved and you are required to attend a citizenship ceremony, you will receive a letter of invitation to attend the ceremony. Generally, your ceremony will be held within 6 months from the time your application is approved. The Australian Citizenship Pledge. It is important for all Australian citizens to understand our responsibilities and privileges and what it means to be a citizen, whether we are Australian by birth or by choice. This is critical to the continuing success of our nation. When you attend your Australian citizenship ceremony, you will make the Australian Citizenship Pledge. In doing so, you are making a public commitment to Australia and accepting the responsibilities and privileges of citizenship. This is the pledge you will make. From this time forward, under God, I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people, whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey. The Australian Citizenship Ceremony. Australian citizenship ceremonies can be small, involving just a few people. Or they can be very large, involving hundreds or even thousands of people. The depth of feeling and pride among new citizens and officials makes it a very joyful celebration. At the beginning of a citizenship ceremony, you may be welcomed by a representative of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are the traditional owners of the land in your area. This welcome to country protocol has been practiced by Indigenous Australians on their traditional homelands for thousands of years. You will hear words of welcome and encouragement from other leaders of your local community or government representatives. You will read or repeat the Australian Citizenship Pledge aloud with other people who have chosen to become Australian citizens. This is the most important part of the ceremony. You do not become an Australian citizen until you have made your pledge of commitment to Australia. You are welcome to bring a holy book or scripture to hold while you make the pledge, but you do not have to do so. Leaders from your community or government representatives will make short speeches on the meaning of citizenship. You will receive your certificate of Australian citizenship and you may also receive a small gift from the community. Everyone will sing Advance Australia Fair, the Australian national anthem. After the citizenship ceremony, you will have the chance to meet and celebrate with your fellow Australians. We wish you every success in becoming an Australian citizen, and in pursuing a peaceful and productive life in Australia. Part 1. Australia and its people. Australia and its people. At the citizenship ceremony, you pledge your loyalty to Australia and its people. It is therefore important for you to have an understanding of Australia's community and population, including our Indigenous heritage. It is also important for you to understand Australia's history and how we have developed into a stable and successful multicultural nation. In this section, you will read about some of the events that have contributed to our story. There is information about our states and territories, and the traditions and symbols that we proudly identify as being distinctly Australian. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Australia's first inhabitants are the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, who have the oldest continuous cultures and traditions in the world. Historically, Aboriginal people are from mainland Australia and Tasmania. The archaeological record indicates that Aboriginal peoples arrived in Australia between 65,000 and 40,000 years ago. However, the Aboriginal peoples believe they are central to the creation stories of this land, and their creation stories commence with the beginning of time. Torres Strait Islander people are from islands between the northern tip of Queensland and Papua New Guinea. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have age-old beliefs and traditions that still guide them today. They have a deep connection with the land, which is expressed in their stories, art, and dance. Indigenous cultures are diverse and an important part of Australia's national identity. Early days of European settlement. European settlement started when the first 11 convict ships, which became known as the First Fleet, arrived from Great Britain on January 26, 1788. At this time British laws were harsh and the jails could not hold the large number of people imprisoned for their crimes. To manage this problem, the British government decided to transport convicts to the other side of the world, to the new colony of New South Wales. The first governor of the colony of New South Wales was Captain Arthur Phillip. The colony survived, and as more convicts and free settlers arrived, it grew and developed. More colonies were established in other parts of Australia. Early free settlers came from Great Britain and Ireland. This British and Irish heritage has had a major influence on Australia's recent history, culture, and politics. In 1851, a gold rush began when gold was discovered in the colonies of New South Wales and Victoria. People from all around the world came to these colonies to try to make their fortunes. Chinese people arriving at this time were the first large group of migrants not from Europe. In 10 years, Australia's population more than doubled. The nation of Australia. In 1901, the separate colonies were united into a federation of states called the Commonwealth of Australia. It was at this time that our national democratic institutions, including our national parliament, government, and the High Court, were established under the new Australian Constitution. In 1901, Australia's population was about 4 million. This number did not include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, as it was not until after a referendum in 1967 that they were included in official estimates of the Australian population. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, migration levels rose and fell. There were programs to actively encourage British migrants to settle here, and many did. A wave of non-British migration came after World War II, when millions of people in Europe had to leave their homelands. Large numbers of Europeans came to Australia to build a new life. In recent years, our migration and refugee programs have brought people to Australia from all over the world. People have come here to join family, to make a new life, or to escape poverty, war, or persecution. The diversity of Australia's population has increased over the last 2 centuries. This diverse and prosperous society enhances Australia's connection to the world. While we celebrate the diversity of Australia's people, we also aim to build a cohesive and unified nation. Australia's national language is English. It is part of our national identity. In keeping with Australian values, migrants should learn and use English to help them participate in Australian society. Communicating in English is important for making the most of living and working in Australia. Other languages are also valued, including more than 100 distinct Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages. Australia states and territories. The Commonwealth of Australia is a federation of states and territories. There are 6 states and 2 mainland territories. Canberra is Australia's capital city, and each state and mainland territory has its own capital. The states. New South Wales was the first colony established by the British. Sydney is the capital city of New South Wales and is the nation's largest city. The Sydney Harbour Bridge and Opera House are national icons. Victoria is the smallest of the mainland states. Victoria's capital city is Melbourne. Many fine buildings in Victoria were built from the wealth created by the gold rush of the 1850s. Victoria's icons include the Melbourne Cricket Ground, the 12 Apostles and the Royal Exhibition Building. Queensland is the second largest state. Queensland's capital city is Brisbane. The Torres Strait Islands lie to the north of the state and the world-famous Great Barrier Reef runs along its eastern coast. Queensland has tropical rainforests, temperate coastal areas and an often dry inland. Western Australia is the largest state. Perth is the capital city of Western Australia. The east of the state is mostly desert, while the southwest is a rich agricultural and wine-growing area. The state is home to many large mining projects. Western Australia's icons include the Ningala Coast, Margaret River, and the Kimberley region. South Australia has a rugged coastline and many famous wine regions. Adelaide, the capital city, has many examples of fine colonial architecture. South Australia's cons include the Barossa Valley and the Flinders Ranges. Tasmania is the smallest state, separated from the mainland by the Bass Strait. Tasmania's capital city is Hobart. Much of the island has unspoilt wilderness landscapes. Tasmanian icons include Cradle Mountain, Port Arthur, and the Bay of Fires.